Welcome in, everyone, to the Talkin Tide podcast on the Pigskin Podcast Network. Chase Goodbread, sports columnist with the Tuscaloosa News on hand, along with Travis Reier, the longtime senior analyst at BamaOnline.com. You can get Talkin Tide podcasts anywhere you prefer to get podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, and as well catch us live on YouTube and Facebook. The Twitter feed is Talkin_Tide. You can get links to all our podcasts right there. And quickly, we want to thank a couple of sponsors: North River Dental Associates, Peterbrook Chocolatier of Tuscaloosa, and DraftKings. And with that, we dive right into a recap of Tennessee's 52-49 thrilling home upset over Alabama. 15-game win streak for Alabama in the series goes by the boards, and a wild game in Knoxville, Travis.
Absolutely. We thought that this game would go over the Vegas total, right? We were both, I think, in agreement. We both like Tennessee getting at the time what was 7.5 point. That line went up though once it became a little more clear that I guess Bryce was gonna play in the game for Alabama, Bryce Young, but
went to 9, right?
Yeah, went up to 9 and still had Tennessee dealing with a couple of absences and Jalen McCullough in the back end of that defense and Cedric Tillman, the wide receiver, not going to play. It just seemed like it was trending in a direction favoring Alabama. And even after the 28-10 lead for Tennessee there in the second quarter, Alabama with the big comeback and has the lead late. Looks like they get a stop, and lo and behold, there is a flag on the play. Boy, and flag's really the story once again for Alabama. I know we're going to talk about that specific play, but there were 16 other penalties on Alabama in the game, so hard to work around all of them, right?
I don't know how you get 7 in the first quarter and then pile on 10 more after that. What in the world? We'll get into that, no doubt, here on this edition of Talkin Tide. But of course, a game-ending field goal by Chase McGrath of Tennessee wobbles home, kind of knuckles home, looked off the foot, Travis, like probably no chance. And, of course, Will Reichard got a lot more lift on his game-winning, potential would-be game-winning field goal try. Did not go. That was a long one. And Nick Saban's coaching staff catching some criticism for those penalties, and rightfully so. Also, a lot of heat on, I think, the staff for the way they handled the sequence there with the play calls right before that field goal. Maybe make Tennessee burn an extra timeout with a run. Who knows? But a lot of what ifs and if onlys out there. But at the end of the day, Tennessee outplayed Alabama. Tennessee went out to that 28-10 lead, and even though Alabama came back, that was still the difference in the game, getting whooped like that. I think in the first quarter plus, they gave up touchdowns on Tennessee's first 3 possessions, just went right through the Alabama defense. And if you count the Quindarius Robinson miscue on the punt, Tennessee's first 4 possessions went for touchdowns. If you give them, if you want to call that that 4th possession, how it went with Robinson's miscue.
Yeah, and just the continued lack of poise for Alabama on the road, really going back to last season and extending into this season. At some point, it's going to catch up with you. There were kind of the ingredients that we've seen in past Alabama losses on the road. A starting quarterback playing out of his mind, although Hendon Hooker certainly won't be confused with a guy like Steven Garcia or Zach Calzada. This guy is a future pro, an NFL quarterback. Not sure if he's a starting NFL quarterback or a long-term guy in the NFL, but he's definitely going to be in the league. The only thing really working against Hendon Hooker right now is that he turns 25 in January. The guy's already older than Mac Jones and Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa. But, that veteran presence obviously helped the Tennessee offense. And you're right. Even if you want to look at the lines of scrimmage, Tennessee controlled those for the most part, rushing for over 180 yards. And, Alabama with 1 sack and 2 tackles for loss in the game, Chase. 0 quarterback hurries, according to the Tennessee stats. That wasn't going to work defensively for Alabama. And then you can't run with Jalen Hyatt. That's a problem too, especially when you're getting sub-package personnel and one of your safeties matched up on him.
Yeah, I thought somewhat quietly Tennessee's pass protection was a big storyline in this game. And Alabama's secondary, of course, after giving up 5 touchdown passes to Hyatt, is catching a lot of grief. But look, there wasn't any heat really to speak of. DJ Dale had Alabama's only sack on a push up the middle. But Tennessee did a great job on Will Anderson, did a nice job on Dallas Turner. We really didn't see the cheetah package. They pretty much kept that off the field. So you add all that together, and you got a secondary that was exposed. And look, Nick Saban really didn't mention much of anything about Alabama's lack of a pass rush. He did mention, though, that Tennessee's coaching staff was able to line up some mismatches in coverage that helped with all this too. I know. Hyatt got loose on DeMarco Hellams, I think, more than once, and that's probably not a matchup you want. So a lot to sort through, a lot to unpack, as they say, Travis, with this Alabama defensive performance. Really rough from a unit that Alabama's really been able to count on for really all year until this one.
Yeah, they have. They've still been spotty in some ways. I caught some heat last week for kind of pointing out that if you're truly an elite defense, even against Texas A&M in the first half of that game, the 2 turnovers that set Texas A&M up on some fairly short fields, I get it. That was a tough spot to be in. But if this defense is what we think it is, then you force at least 1 field goal on those 2 opportunities. Now, they did more of that in the second half. But, I guess if I'm an Alabama fan, my biggest problem with all that, couple of things from Saturday against Tennessee, is that some of those same matchups were the matchups Tennessee got on you in Tuscaloosa last year.
Right.
Except it was Daniel Wright instead of DeMarco Hellams.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So what did you learn from those? You got away with it. You got away with it because you won by 28 ultimately. But that was a tight game going into the fourth quarter last year. And so, we've heard Nick Saban talk many, many times about, it's always nice to be able to learn lessons in a win as compared to a loss. Based on what Alabama was getting matched up with in the secondary, it didn't look to me like they learned anything from last year's game, because you had essentially a lot of the same matchups, just with different guys. In fact, it was so bad in Tuscaloosa a year ago, Daniel Wright was benched for an injured DeMarco Hellams in that game. Mid-game, they went to DeMarco, who was dealing with the ankle stuff last year. So you can't plead ignorance, or you didn't know. You saw this last year. Now, the one thing they did do, and I think this hurt them probably in their run defense, and it's something we talked about last week, was how do you approach Tennessee to open possessions with your front? Last year, they were more heavy. They went 3 defensive linemen and Will Anderson. We talked about that last week.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday, they want to play Dallas Turner and Will Anderson together. I get that. But that left them lighter than a year ago, than when they had LeBrian Ray at a defensive end and Will at the jack. So
and Tennessee hurt Alabama on the run.
They did enough.
Ran for 180 or
They did enough. They didn't kill them, but they also have backs and a quarterback who are yards after contact guys. So because you've got 4 linebackers on the field a lot with just 2 DLs in that nickel package, some of those 2-yard runs turn into 5, 6, 7, right? After the contact. And that's where you missed a guy like Jalen Moody, I think, in the game, because Jalen Moody gives you some thump against the run. Now, he may not be the athletic guy that Deontay Lawson is, and Deontay's going to be great. This isn't to put him down at all. But I think one of the things that hadn't been talked about is I think you missed Jalen Moody in this game, where your run defense was concerned. And then when Tennessee started pulling linemen and running some of that counter type action, You're asking Dallas Turner and Will Anderson to take that on and set edges against stuff like that. And that didn't always work out well either.
And strangely enough, Travis, the word straight from Nick Saban midweek was Jalen Moody was a go.
I was surprised that he didn't. Yeah.
That was interesting for
so
sure.
I don't know. Maybe the decision was made just to go with Deontay. And again, I think Deontay's going to be great. I think he's already really, really good, and he's going to be critical in a year's time. But one thing I know Jalen Moody can do is make tackles, and not just make tackles, but limit yards after contact.
Tennessee not only kept itself in really good, I thought, for the most part, some third and shorts with that running game, set up some second and shorts too, Travis. And when you do that, that opens the door for Hooker to take shots, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the freedom to turn it loose and maybe throw a low percentage pass for a big gain downfield, that comes after you spring one up the middle and right through the A gap for 8 or 9.
Well, and also on the explosive pass plays, look, sometimes you're going to get caught in a matchup where you're going to get beat at the line of scrimmage and there's going to be separation. But can somebody make a tackle, to limit it to even just 30 yards instead of it just going 78? That was the most glaring thing to me in Hooker needing just 30 attempts to pass for 385 yards, was that we weren't talking about minimal windows at all. We were talking about wide open spaces of green.
Yeah.
And Jalen Hyatt doesn't need a lot of help. He just needs a little bit. And these were just boat race jobs, where people weren't even in the neighborhood. And this is a very experienced back end of that defense. And yeah, Terrion Arnold was targeted a little bit on the outside, but this wasn't Texas A&M. This was attacking safeties and sub package guys. And even when Alabama tried to go dime to get another defensive back on the field, Hyatt actually had his 78-yarder against that look.
Right. And Hooker, for his part, he had a couple of overthrows to wide open guys. They missed a couple. They didn't hit them all.
That's the thing. And look, Hendon Hooker gonna be more of a Heisman probably factor at this point than Bryce. But anyone that tries to tell me in the NFL draft next spring you would take Hendon Hooker over Bryce Young after what we saw from those guys in terms of translating to the next level, come on now, give me a break. And good for Hendon Hooker. Again, he deserves all the accolades he's going to get between now and the end of the season. But as a pro, Bryce Young's ready right now.
A good segue to talk offense there for Alabama. Travis, Bryce Young returns from the AC joint sprain in his shoulder to throw for 455, couple of touchdowns. Really was the star of the day for Alabama, kept him in it late, brought him back from the big deficit. And not only that, but it was pretty clear he didn't have any interest in running the ball. And he usually doesn't anyway, right? He's a throw first quarterback. I think even more so in this one, he looked reticent to tuck it. But what a magic act he pulled off, avoiding sacks. There were a couple of times where Tennessee pass rushers looked like they had him dead to rights. And he was able to spin away, make a quick move, change the direction type stuff, buy himself some extra time. And really one of his, especially when you factor in the quality of the opponent and the road setting and coming off the shoulder, you add all that together, and you could argue that this was as good a game as he's ever played at Alabama.
Well, and the thing was, when it was winning time, he did tuck it a few times. You're right. For the first 3 quarters, it was obvious. He had been coached, and understandably so. You just can't be taking the kind of hits that he took even in this game a year ago when he had a couple of rushing touchdowns. But he took some shots, and I love the intangibles about Bryce Young in this game as much as anything else. He took shots in the pocket that by NFL standards, there would be a fine letter from Roger Goodell in your locker Tuesday if you put some of the shots on an NFL quarterback that you
Yeah.
put on Bryce Young in this game. And, that goes back to the penalty situation too. But no, Bryce Young tried to make it everything this team did to lose that game. He tried to make it all right. And that was a lot. I mean, when you talk about special teams failures, you talk about a defense that was vaporized for the most part. Even with all that on the road in front of that kind of crowd, Bryce Young almost made it. He almost made it all right.
Yeah.
Well, and Jahmyr Gibbs, let's give him some credit too. And I know what you're saying about Bryce avoiding sacks. I thought the offensive line was at least okay in the game. Now, when Alabama needed to be able to thump the run game in the fourth quarter for the second straight week, they weren't able to do it.
Yeah.
And I know there's some questions about, how Alabama handled those final three offensive plays. And I get it from a clock perspective, but I didn't have a problem with it because at that point, Alabama was not effectively doing anything on the ground. And Bryce Young's the best player in the building. So why not put it in his hands there? And
Yeah.
if Gibbs makes the catch, we're not probably talking about any of this on second down because it looked like he had room coming back across the field, maybe could have scored.
That could have been big. There's no doubt about it. You hate to see that for Gibbs, who played such a really good
Yeah,
game.
and I've got no problem with Jahmyr Gibbs either, by the way.
Yeah.
He was a big eraser for the rest of that football team Saturday too, along with Bryce.
Third straight 100-yard game, if I'm not mistaken, for Jahmyr Gibbs. He had 5 catches as well. He was big. There's no question about it. Saw a little less of Jace McClellan than I thought we'd see. This coaching staff, they seem to be leaning a little bit more on Gibbs at this point in the season.
And I think once Alabama got down big and they were pretty much in comeback mode, they were going to go with Gibbs because they needed big plays to try to get back in the game. And they did it pretty quickly there between the second and the third quarters. But he's obviously the top guy. They tried to do some 2-back stuff, especially there in the first half. They were effective with the orbit and high motion looks in the game against Tennessee last year. So I wasn't surprised to see more of that maybe against the Vols than we had seen against A&M. But I thought Gibbs was great too. Give Tennessee credit though. I mean, he averaged 4.3 a carry. And if you're Tennessee going into the game and he comes in averaging nearly 9, 4.3 is a win, right?
You take that. Yeah, there's no question about it. A couple other big plays in the game that just can't go without mention. The Dallas Turner fumble recovery for a touchdown. What an unbelievable turn of events that was. Really Alabama's best momentum in the entire game, I thought, was pretty much at that moment.
There was like 3 different plays or sequences there in the fourth quarter alone where you felt like Alabama might have won the game. That was one of them. The pass interference call on Malachi Moore on the interception that was wiped away by Kool-Aid McKinstry was definitely one of them.
Yep.
And then the field goal attempt by Will Reichard, who, even though it's 50 yards, you're still thinking this guy is so good that you're expecting that to go through. There's not many college kickers where you're looking at a 50-yarder in that situation and going, yeah, I actually think this is going through the goalpost. And I still thought it with Will. It's just a little wide right. So, yes, I thought Alabama was on the receiving end of some bad breaks. But they also had some opportunities on their own to really put the game away.
Speaking of goalposts, they come down at Neyland Stadium, Travis. The Knoxville News Sentinel did a really nice job tailing the goalposts, writing the story of what became of the goalposts. I believe one of the goalposts, or at least a piece of one, ended up in the Tennessee River, and another ended up in the backyard of a fraternity house where it was sawed into pieces for keepsakes and sure to be eventual eBay profits and such. I don't know how you verify that this was This is I don't know if you can get a COA, right? A certificate of authenticity for a piece of that post. I don't know if you can get that, but some of that'll be sold, I'm sure, and some of it'll end up on shelves of Tennessee fans for many years.
And then we see on social media Sunday, Tennessee football, Tennessee athletics, asking fans to donate for the new pair. Yeah.
What is that about?
Well, I mean, they owe about $100 million still in buyouts, I think, so times is hard. When I used to think maybe Alabama's literally broken Tennessee football, well, maybe it did. Maybe the Vols are broke, and they're having to GoFundMe, crowdsource new goalposts up there in Knoxville.
I clicked on. It's been a wild day for me. I actually, believe it or not, I went from Knoxville to Auburn and then back to Tuscaloosa.
You hit the rival Sunday trail. Yeah,
no doubt. I was down there for a ceremony for the daughter who's in medical school down there. But on my way back, I clicked on that GoFundMe, Travis.
So officially now, Chase Goodbarner, we'll refer to him.
There you go. There you have it. But no, the GoFund or whatever it is, the fundraising drive that Tennessee put out on its official football Twitter feed, Travis. The goal is $150,000, I believe. They had as of maybe an hour ago here on Sunday night before we went on the air, they had collected $62,000 from about 1,500 donors. So what is that? A little less than 100 apiece on average. And the goal didn't say what the goal was, but it said 41% of the goal had been reached, and they'd gotten $62,000. So I'm guessing that's about $150,000. Well, they caught a $100,000 fine from the SEC because it's their second time storming Summerine. I think the basketball program got their first offense on that. I got to think that it can't possibly cost $150,000 to stick two goalposts in the ground. I think they might. I wonder if they might be trying to help pay that SEC fine too with this drive.
Yeah, you never know. Big baseball fans suddenly in Knoxville these days with that baseball program. Maybe they tore down a foul pole after a 2 of 3 win over LSU or something. No, I mean it speaks to how wins over Alabama still resonate, unlike any maybe in all of sports right now. Really. I'm talking about the after effect. You're watching NFL football on Sunday. I'm watching our Jags lose again. It's Jags Colts. Does anybody watching Jags Colts really care about Tennessee or Alabama football? I mean, the numbers of people that are watching that game,
right?
It's brought up, the Alabama Tennessee game. I mean, it was a hell of a game. Don't get me wrong, but the constant for the last 10, 15 years is that it involves Alabama. It just resonates.
It's giant toppling. That's how. That's what it is.
And there isn't a bigger one. I don't care. It's crazy because Georgia's the defending national champion, and all people still talk about is Alabama losing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy.
All right, the Talkin Tide podcast on the Pigskin Podcast Network. Moving on right now with a couple of shout outs to our fine sponsors. Going to start out telling you about North River Dental Associates and that great job that former Alabama linebacker Jack Smalley and his super staff of dental hygienists does over there at that great location right off of Watermelon Road at 1100 Fairfax Park. North River Dental Associates will get you taken care of, whether you need porcelain veneers, cosmetic dentistry, pediatric dentistry for the kids, the laser dentistry, the endodontics, dentures, teeth whitening services. They do it all over there. And, of course, they're going to get you in and out of the door, typically in under an hour on a routine cleaning. That waiting room is usually empty. No more than 1 or 2 people in there max, typically, when you go in there. They get you in and out quickly, but they do a fantastic job quality-wise. Also offering Botox and Juvederm treatments at North River Dental. If you want to tighten up those facial features, Dr. Jack has you taken care of on that as well. Give them a call at 752-3506, or you can go online and visit northriverdentist.com to make an appointment. It is North River Dental Associates.
I'm going to tell you about Peterbrook Chocolatier out there at 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. Look, if you picked up one of those chocolate cigars for Tennessee Week, you're in luck. You were in luck because that baby tasted a lot better after that Alabama defeat, didn't it?
Yeah.
Than the traditional cigars. At least you had something to maybe help you feel a little bit better with those chocolate cigars. But Peterbrook, of course, got you covered for upcoming Halloween. They've got the Boo Bark. You can do a Boo Bark class where you actually go in yourself and maybe a friend or two or a group, and you make your own Boo Bark, and then you take it home and enjoy it for yourself. 205-752-0211. That's the phone number there at Peterbrook Chocolatier. Get yourself signed up today. They've got classes for adults. They've got summer camps, all those type of things, interactive activities at Peterbrook Chocolatier, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North.
All right, finally going to tell you all about our corporate sponsor. That would be DraftKings, the NFL action in full swing at the DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Talking touchdowns, big plays, and even bigger wins. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win, and you'll get $200 in free bets if they do. You absolutely cannot beat that deal. Everyone can boost their winnings with DraftKings. Stepped up same game parlays as well. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. You need to use the promo code TPPN. That's the Pigskin Podcast Network acronym. And they'll get you started with $200 in free bets if your team wins on a $5 bet on any football game. Again, use promo code TPPN only at the DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Travis, as always, we look around the SEC to close out the Sunday nighter. We begin with a quick discussion of Ole Miss's win over Auburn, 48-34, the final score there. 3 100-yard rushers. What has gotten into Lane Kiffin? He's Barry Switzer all of a sudden, Travis, with this running game over at Ole Miss. It's out of control. Nobody can stop this Ole Miss running game.
No, they can't. And brought back a fairly experienced and talented offensive line and hit the portal for Zach Evans. Brought in a really good young back in Judkins. And, Jackson Dart, even at the quarterback position, they're getting some Matt Corral-like rushing production from. And transfer portal Rebs, man, really across that team. But, that game ended up closer than I thought it would, especially after the start that Ole Miss got off to. But kind of more of what we had expected from Tank Bigsby for Auburn in that game. Jarquez Hunter, too, at the running back position. So it looked better for Auburn in that sort of shootout, but still another loss for Brian Harsin.
LSU knocks off Florida in the swamp, 45-35, the final score there. Big night for Jaden Daniels, the transfer portal quarterback for the LSU Tigers. Richardson for Florida played okay, had a really nice rushing game, but they're looking for more for him for sure in the passing game. But really, Travis, Florida's defense, kind of the story in this one, just looked horrible against LSU.
Yeah, that's cringy for a Florida defense to get beaten up like that. And, something about LSU going into Gainesville, they don't seem to fret that very much lately, it seems like. And Daniels is playing at a pretty consistent and high level. So if you're an Alabama fan and thinking about quarterbacks on the horizon like Will Rogers, well, you're going to have another one coming off that bye week when Alabama goes to Baton Rouge and sees Daniels and the Tigers.
Finally, Kentucky knocks off Mississippi State. That final score, 27-17. Of note, obviously, because Mississippi State is the Crimson Tide's upcoming opponent. Will Levis back in action in this one, but Chris Rodriguez, kind of the story, 197 yards for your guy, Chris Rodriguez. Really hard runner, tough runner, and Mississippi State couldn't do anything with him. Just when you're ready to start thinking about trying to trust the Mike Leach team, Travis, they pull a kind of a stinker like this.
Yeah, Mike doesn't like flying on the radar so good. I think Mike likes it better. Pirate likes it better when he's able to kind of sneak up on your ship, and take over things. But I had that one wrong, and that's what I get. You said the key word. I trusted Mississippi State in that spot, and
I did too. I picked them.
I know we did, and that's what we both get. And so, yeah, Levis, big performance, but I guess the Kentucky defense too. You look at 17 points from Mississippi State in that game. You got to give those guys a lot of credit.
That is going to do it for this edition of the Talkin Tide podcast. I want to thank our viewers and listeners on YouTube, Facebook, and elsewhere. Be sure to join Travis and I on Wednesday night when we preview the Crimson Tide's upcoming home game against the Mississippi State Bulldogs. So for Travis Reier, the San Diego Padres hat-clad Travis Reier.
Braves are out. Yep. Braves are out, so I'm on the Pods bandwagon.
There you go. There you go. I don't like the Dodgers a whole lot. I was glad to see San Diego knock them off as well. We'll see how they continue through that National League postseason. All right. Thanks for joining us here on Talkin Tide. We will talk to you on Wednesday night.